Okay. So today we have the subject of Swadhaya, and this is connected to the teachings of Patanjali, the Eightfold Path. And in the Eightfold Path, Ashtanga Yoga, we understand that everything is connected. That even though we might talk about the spiritual life in linear terms, where you start here as a beginner and you go through various stages and then you become advanced, and it seems like a very linear process, but it's actually a process that takes place in the center of all things. When we talk about spirit, we're talking about something that's timeless, something that has no beginning and has no end. And our very nature is that spirit. So it's interesting, we're talking about moving forward when we're actually trying to find a center of stillness, a center of no motion that is ever new, which implies motion. And these contradictory ideas are connected to the fact that the world that we live in has duality. It has positive and negative. It has two sides of the coin. And in this case, we're talking about, what are we talking about? Swadhaya. Self-study. Because the reason I got confused is because there's a lot of selves. So what path do we follow? If somebody asks you, what is your religion? What do you say? We follow the path of what?
Self-realization.
Self-realization. And when I fill out these forms, it says, they ask, what religion are you? There's Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, all these. Then it says other. And we're other. Because we follow the path. We're yogis, and we talk about the path of Sanatana Dharma, this eternal teaching, the eternal truth. But the words that we actually use is the path of self-realization. So we're trying to realize something that's called the self. But what is the self? We have to understand what the self is before we can understand how to study it, how to perceive it more deeply. And unfortunately, in many religions, what they do is instead of studying yourself, they study scriptures, they study books. And when reading the yamas and the niyamas of Patanjali, many people, when coming to Swadhaya, will interpret that as studying the scriptures. But what is the essence of the scripture? The purpose of the scripture is to discover the self, to realize the self. And the very word Swadhaya, Swa means self. Swa is the self, but what is the self? If we're going to study it, we have to, that very study will help us to understand what it is. But you've got to start somewhere. You've got to investigate. So if you're a self doctor, the doctor of the self, somebody goes, well, I want to study myself, but I don't know what to do. Then the doctor says, well, we've got to take an evaluation. Take an evaluation. What is your current circumstance? What is the current circumstance of most people on planet Earth today? Their vision of self is the body and the personality. Their experience of self as well. I'm me. I'm Vijay. I'm this or that. And I always have fun when people say, well, because they ask, well, who are you? Well, I'm Vijay, and what do you do? And most people, that self-definition is, well, I'm a doctor, I'm an engineer, I'm whatever it is. But when people ask me, what do you do? Well, I live. I'm a liver. We're alive, we're in a central truth. And then if they really wanted me to define myself, I would say, well, I'm the disciple. Because this is the way I would choose if I was going to decide to define myself. I was, well, what is my highest sense of my purpose? Is to be a disciple, and I've been done contract and construction, electrical, plumbing, auto mechanics. I've been a salesman. I've been a shopkeeper. The list of writer, musician, composer, speaker, father, Cub Scout troop leader, soccer coach. All of these things. Well, what am I? This is a classical question that yogis will present to people who approach them and say, well, teach me. So, well, okay, ask yourself this question, who am I? Who am I? And that basic question is, what is the self? What are you? And as Kriyanandaji often said, we define ourselves, we have these self-definitions. We define ourselves, well, physically, I'm this body, and I'm skinny over there, and I'm chubby over here, and I have this color hair, and we define ourselves by is my skin clear today, or does it have imperfections? Am I having a bad hair day? That's what we do. Oh, okay. Be careful. I'm having a bad hair day. Be nice. We define ourselves by, okay, so I am my response to life. So I like these things, and I don't like those things. This is myself. So what do you want for dinner? Well, I want the foods that I enjoy, and I don't want the foods that I don't enjoy. And if I go out to dinner and they only serve the foods that I don't enjoy, then this self isn't pleased. If the world doesn't treat me the way I want to be treated, I'm displeased. And this is who I am. This is what we grow up believing. And I'm good at sports, or I'm not good at sports. I'm good at games. I'm not good at games. All of these definitions of self. Well, yogis say, Swadhaya, self-study. Study that. Study what it is, and study into it as deep as you can go. See if there's more there than maybe you had considered. And you've heard me come back to this many times, but where can happiness be found? Inside. Everybody knows it. But where do we look for it? Outside. This basic dilemma that we live in. So we believe that we are this self that got these grades on tests in school, that has this way of relating to relationships. I'm successful in relationships. I'm not successful in relationships. I'm good at business. I'm not good at business. All of these, and this is the world we live in. And people will say, if you start to aspire to something higher than that, they'll say, get real. Yeah, get real. Don't be up in the sky somewhere. Be real. Put your feet down onto the earth. It's interesting. Kriyanandaji said, when asked what's the most important yoga posture, he said, standing firmly on your own 2 feet. That sounds to me like a call to get real. But what is he talking about? When we talk about self, we have to realize that self is body, self is mind, is emotions, and is spirit. And the spirit is the part that most people leave out. We leave out this most important part of it because it's at the center of all things. It's the place that you've got to go if you want to experience happiness, is inside. If you want to find your access to your highest potential, you've got to find that place in your spirit. Later on, Patanjali talks about, I can't say it, the Indian word, but it's usually described as devotion to the Supreme Lord. But its essential meaning is devotion to truth. not to religion. And worship not in terms of pranaming to a deity, but to entering in fully into the consciousness of universal truth. That truth which we describe as the consciousness of all things: love, joy, peace, calmness, the power of spirit, the light, the sound of the universe, the understanding underneath all circumstances. This universal reality is the larger self. The ego personality is the smaller self. So we talk about the higher self or the lower self. We talk about the little I or the big I. And then we having thinking that we're experiencing quite fully the little self, and thinking for most people is that that's all there is. Because in America, each state has a saying, a slogan for their state. And Missouri is the show me state. You got to prove it to me. I don't believe it unless you prove it to me. There were, the Swamis used to tell, I think Master used to tell this story too. I don't remember the man's name, but he was well known. And he was riding on the train one day, and with a companion, and they were looking out on the scenery, and there was a bunch of sheep. And so the companion says to this fellow, he says, "Well, the sheep are shorn. Their coats have been cut off." And the man looks. He says, "Oh, on this side anyway." He wouldn't believe the other side unless he could see it. Well, and that's not, the thing is, the yogis would say that's not necessarily such a bad attitude. You should not assume things completely unseen. And yet many religions will define faith as belief in things unseen. The yogis say, see it. That's why yoga is so much more scientific. It says, look, don't take my word for it. Explore this concept of self. So when we talk about self-realization, we're talking about exploring rather than the universe outside. We're talking about exploring the universe inside. If there's something going on in there, then take a scientific approach to experiencing it. And this is very simply what the path of yoga is, and the discoveries of the yogis of that internal process. But in order to be successful in this inner search, to realize that if you want to go out into outer space, you have to have a vehicle. You have to have a mechanism with which you use to go out there. And we have a mechanism that we are using right now that we currently are pointing it towards the world. We have to understand this mechanism in order to go within successfully. That's the little stuff. We cannot deny that we're living in a body. You can't just say, oh, this world is unreal, only spirit is real. If you go out on the street and stand in the middle of the road, you're going to get smashed by an unreal vehicle of some kind. And then you're going to experience unreal pain that you won't enjoy. So, yes, this world is unreal, but that doesn't, it's unreal because it's not what it appears to be. It's like magic. When the magician makes the airplane disappear, boom, it's gone. I mean, it's amazing what they do in magic today. They do these humongous tricks. They make huge things as very, that's not even possible. And yet they did it. But you know that they didn't dematerialize it. That you don't know how they did it, but it's still somewhere. It's just not. So the trick is that it's not what it appears to be. You don't know the details. Well, fortunately, there's this great lineage of yogis who have explained the details of how to explore the inner self, the higher self. And one of the things we have to do in order to be successful in that is take an evaluation and work with what we are aware of. We have to evaluate. If you go to the doctor's office and says, well, I'm just not feeling well. So the new devotee says, I'm just not feeling my higher self. Says, okay, well, let's look at your lower self and see what's going on. Why is it getting in the way? And this is a process that we need to begin to become self-aware. The awareness of the lower self is part of the process for becoming aware of the higher self. We have to be realistic about where we're at today and what we can do in order to push forward. This is why when we teach Hatha Yoga, we encourage people, don't look at others to see how they're doing. And if you don't know how to do the pose, okay, look to see which way you're leaning. But don't say, well, that person's better than me because they can bend farther than you can. That is an incorrect way to evaluate progress. Progress comes from taking you from where you're at today and moving forward. And we often will look at somebody, they're sitting straight, oh, they must be more advanced than I am. This person's fasting, oh, they must be more advanced than I am. And, oh, I'm such a bad disciple. I didn't fast today. I didn't, meditate for 8 hours. We're not very, very good. I have to say I've gotten a lot of enjoyment out of YouTube. Human beings are incredibly entertaining. And one of the things that human beings are really bad at is self-evaluation. They're very bad at looking at themselves and seeing clearly what they would look like if somebody was looking at them. And someone neutral who was just observing the doctor, their only purpose is to help you, so the doctor's evaluating. You can't do it. You can't, and doctors know, the internet drives some doctors crazy now because everybody looks up their symptoms on the internet and goes to their doctor and says, well, here's what I've got because this is what it says on the internet. And that's, again, that's a little bit of education. They say a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. I sometimes say I know just enough about mechanics to get myself into trouble because I'll try to do things and then at sometimes, I've found that you can do whatever you choose to do, but sometimes it's just not worth the trouble. So this process of self-evaluation is a very important one. But we have to do it in the light of what we're trying to accomplish. And the only way to do it in the light of what we're trying to accomplish is to begin to experience that light. So if you want to learn, and that's why these things are simultaneous truths, if you want to, and in the path of Patanjali, that in order to attain perfection in Swadhaya, then you've got to experience your true self in samadhi, oneness with infinite spirit. So that's why there's this connection. You've got to experience the end before you can perfect the beginning. So, and this of course leads people sometimes to say, well, I can't do samadhi, so I might as well not try. But the end result of that is suffering. So at some point you get tired of suffering and you say, I want to experience well-being. So we've got to experience more and more of the higher self. And with the perception of the higher self, look more and more clearly at the little self. The way that we're interacting with life. Yes, we can get ideas about how to improve ourselves through study, through discourse, through studying the teachings. These are all gives us a sense of, it's like doctors go to school and they study medicine, but when they graduate, then they begin to practice medicine. You can't, you have to put them together, you have to study and practice. And unfortunately, sometimes people leave that out, so they only study the spiritual life, but they never practice the spiritual life. Therefore, they don't experience transformation. So you've got to practice connecting to the higher self, and as a part of that, you become more and more aware of the things that are getting in the way. You're like the rocket ship. It's not getting off the launch pad. What's the problem? You have to analyze the systems. And so we look at ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. We begin to observe these things. So we call it introspection. We turn our awareness from out into the world to observation. And one of the things that we do in the spiritual life is begin to stand back. We are trying to learn detachment. And we want to recognize this. I am identified. Remember, what is the ego is the soul identified with the body. So it's a little, okay, my soul is identified with this body personality, but they aren't the same. What is it? So basically the soul has taken on the costume of the body personality, or the clothing. You know, the clothes. So my clothing looks like this. Your clothing looks like that. But the soul underneath is spirit, is a unique, individualized expression of spirit. And the soul's nature is all of those attributes of spirit. But we're not fully experiencing that. We get tastes of it when we feel bliss, when we feel love. That's just the beginning of it. So when Swamiji often recommended this idea that at the end of the day, when you're lying in bed, you look at how you've done today. And of course, this is how the Bhagavad Gita starts. What did they? Sanjaya, who represents introspection, is talking to the blind king, who represents the blind mind, and saying, what happened on the field of battle? How did I do today? And you realize, oh, wow, when that guy criticized me, I really got upset. And not only did I get upset that I was being criticized, but I then criticized him. Or when I was driving the car, oh man, that person cut in front of me, that really upset me. And, but then I went, okay, let it go. Oh good. I caught myself before I went into shooting with my laser gun. You know. And we begin to observe, and then we begin to live more consciously. And this is key. We remember, self-realization is the expansion of consciousness, the increasing of your awareness from a limited ability to perceive to a greater and greater and greater level to perceive what? Truth. What is the truth? What is the truth that's flowing through my consciousness? What is the truth that's being expressed in consciousness around me? And eventually to perceive that there's no separation between that consciousness and myself. And that the things that separate us are part of the illusion. And the recognition of truth underneath all things is what qualities of consciousness are being expressed here. Through me, through others, through the totality of the situation. And what happens as we deepen our connection to the higher self in meditation is that we begin to see more and more clearly underneath the surface of life what's actually going on here. What consciousness is being expressed in this situation, in this circumstance. Now, whenever somebody starts learning something new, it's quite common for them to become frustrated. So you look at if you're learning ballroom dancing, you're stepping on your feet or your partner's feet, and you, oh darn. Or you see even quite accomplished sports people will when they hit a bad shot, man, they smash the racket and they get all excited about it. And we sometimes turn that consciousness on ourselves. So we become we can become our own worst enemy by putting ourselves down. I used to be very reactive to my father's criticism of me. And then I began to be very reactive of anybody's criticism to me. And when I was a young man in school, I had what they call a hair trigger, and my hair was bright red, and I don't know if this is the truth or not, but at least it was said that if you had bright red hair, you had a temper. Somehow they went together. A fiery temperament. The colors went there. And I did. I would just, as soon as somebody criticized me, it didn't matter if they were right or wrong. It just had absolutely nothing to do with it. But the sneaky part of the whole thing was that as I began to observe that I did the same thing to myself, that I began to criticize myself. So I was criticizing everybody else's criticism. They shouldn't criticize me. Oh, but it's okay for me to criticize myself. And I began to do the very things that I was thinking was bad in others, and of course, and then I would often be on the offensive. And so I would criticize them first. Well, then I came onto the spiritual path, and I found that critical thinking could be helpful. I was in the practice of observing what was going on. And I've had this lifelong interest. What's really going on here? What's going on underneath the surface? But when I met Swamiji, it was fascinating to me. Wow, what's going on in there? What's he really like inside? And I spent a lot of time just observing him, trying to feel what was going on. And this is an essential part of the spiritual life, is to inwardly reach out and try to perceive the truth of what's going on underneath the surface. But at the same time, you have to do it without judgment. You have to learn how not to judge others for who they are, just to perceive the truth of what it is, including your own self. So when we talk about self-study, we have to recognize we're going to study how we're doing, but we don't want to tear it down. We want to purify it. There's a difference. When you try to uplift something, then you have to make sure the mechanism is working well, but you don't do that by beating it up all the time. It's interesting, in the armed services in America, the Navy SEALs are considered to be the elite of the elite. And documentaries have been done of the training that they do to become a SEAL. And it's the most intensive training. And the classical definition of Navy SEAL training is the drill sergeant just absolutely putting this guy down. He can't do anything right. He's yelling at him at the top of his lungs, telling him what a worthless, I can't use the other words they use, but a worthless person you are. And it was, they believed that you just absolutely had to destroy this person before you could mold them in the way that you wanted. But even they, in recent years, having studied this process, have realized that you have to include positive reinforcement. If you only take that negative approach, you limit what you can accomplish. And this is a key thing to understand when you're working with yourself. Yes, you can be tough with yourself, depends on your nature. Some people aren't tough enough. Says, oh, it's okay, I'm a good person. Even though I fail in everything I do, I'm a good person. You know, you have to be able to honestly look. Yes, you're a nice person. You have good intentions, but you're lazy. But you don't feel like doing anything. So you know, you have to be honest about these things. Say, well, okay, here's the things that I'm doing well. Here's the things that I can improve in, and of course, we have the understanding about how to support ourselves spiritually in the Sangha environment. We create an environment that supports our spiritual efforts. And the more time we spend in it, the easier it is. Yes, you can accomplish self-transformation by yourself in a cave, but it's a lot more difficult than it is if you're around a group of people under most circumstances. If you're in a group of people who are going the same way that you're going. This is why people go to university. You could study the same books at home. Yeah, I mean, but it's not the same. These online universities where you just study at home, it's not the same. I'm not saying it's not valuable, it's valuable, but it's not the same. You've got to immerse yourself not only in the information, but in the vibration. That vibration, this internal connectiveness. And this is why a growing sense of interconnection to spirit is essential for transformation of the smaller self into its reflection of a higher self. This is something that took me a long time. I struggled for a long time with my shortcomings. Or what I perceived as my shortcomings. And I looked at these things and I felt bad about them. And because I felt bad about them, I had bad feelings. And that's a form of negativity. And it took me a long time to get to a place where I could make friends with myself and accept myself. If you don't take another step further, it's okay. You've got to make friends with yourself, but in order to make friends with yourself, you have to understand, at least as much as you can, what it is you're talking about. You cannot take a blind eye to your shortcomings, but you have to see them and then accept them. And then from there, it's like yoga postures. Oh, this is as far as I can go. Accept it. Get over it. This is it. But tomorrow, it may be further. And each day that you practice, you'll see improvement. And that's the key. If you're making improvement, then you're going in the right direction. It's just a matter of time. So this is something that we want to do, is to realize that, yes, we want to look at how we're doing each day, but recognize that there's micromanagement and there's global management. There's macro management. We do both. We commune with God as best we can in meditation. We serve God in all actions as we're able to, and we attune to the Guru, whose guidance and blessings are a powerful part of our transformation. And with that association, see, when I was with Kriyanandaji, I was inwardly looking out, inwardly trying to perceive what's the truth of him. And I had already been very observant when I was surfing. Surfing mainly was because I like to surf. But surfing, in order to surf, you have to catch a wave. And in order to catch a wave, you have to put yourself in the right place at the right time. And then you have to know what to do when that time and place come. And so the waves are coming and you don't know when they're going to come. And there's this whole process of attunement to nature, to the ocean, to the waves and the rhythm of the waves. And you're inwardly, and then there's a group of guys where they all want to get the same wave. So you got to outsmart these guys. So when they see a wave coming, you have to see it before them. You have to anticipate, where is the next wave going to come? And the more in tune, and I observed these more advanced surfers, somehow they were always in the right place in the right time to get the best waves. I'm thinking, wait, everybody's here together. Yet somehow, when nobody's looking, this guy wanders over to the side, and then he wanders back, and suddenly he's there, the wave is there. And this inward reaching out and attuning yourself. So I learned that was essential, and I got my share of waves, that I was in the right place at the right time. And I realized this works, and then I realized that this can happen when you're looking for a job. This can happen when you're seeking relationships. Whatever you're trying to do in life, this inward reaching out can attune you to the flow of life. This life is the universal life, the universal presence of God, of Spirit in life. And this is our higher self. It's our own self. You could say family. This is my family. This is my home. This is my reality. In that, when we practice attunement to that, then, and you don't have to be a master to have attunement to that. You won't have a perception of the whole universe, but you'll have a growing perception of your part, of your place in it, of what you need to know, what you need to experience in that moment, in that place. And this has been given. God has brought us here to live the lives that we're living in an ever expanding, ever purified, ever more positive way. So when we, as we introspect, we've got to bring our connection to Spirit into that introspection. And you feel, as you open yourself up to it, you'll perceive more and more of the truth of who you are and how you're living. And then you observe how you're doing during the day, and then you begin to make little adjustments. Make a little adjustment here, and you will begin to live more and more consciously, with the feeling that God's presence is underneath all ups and downs of life. And then you'll have a good day. Thank God. You have a rough day. Thank God. And you have just begin to have, and then what happens is the little self becomes more, your awareness becomes less identified with the little self and more identified with the big self. This is what we're trying to get to, because we are already connected. We already are the big self, but we can't perceive it. We have to open up the window of our consciousness and perceive more and more of that higher self. So this is this process of being consciously aware of our inner process is an essential part of the spiritual life. Because if we don't pay attention, then like many people, you've gone driving down this road for a long time, and then suddenly it stops, and you go, wait a minute, what happened? You get off track. We don't accomplish as much as we could if we had been paying attention. So the little self that we are more identified with, it doesn't stop. You don't stop having an ego to live through. When you become a master, Yoganandaji had a personality. But that personality expressed his identification with the big self, not with the immersion in the little self. So you weren't going to be somebody else. I observed Swamiji. I wanted to emulate him. But I'm not supposed to become him. I can't be Swami. But I can attune myself to the process so that I can be God, Guru, through this form. So basically you become the better of you, a better of the role that you're playing. The role that you would define as you, the little you, can be played with a higher, purer consciousness. So instead of reacting to criticism, I'm aware that people are criticizing me, It's not like I'm standing there going, oh, and then this person is throwing rose petals on me. No, I get it, that they're upset with me or think I've done something wrong. But my attitude, I don't take that negative energy and throw it back at them. I go, oh, okay. And then, if you can, then you think, oh, you see, when people are upset, what are they experiencing? Discomfort. They're suffering. Oh, so then what I want to begin to do is go, oh, why is this person uncomfortable? What can I do to make them more comfortable instead of just protecting myself? And then you realize that caring about others is instant protection from being overly conscious about how people are treating you. So then this is how, in spirit, we are automatically protected. We don't have to think, oh Lord, protect me. Because we are protected when we have positive consciousness, when we connect to that expansive perspective in all circumstances. And that even physical death is, again, part of the illusion. Because we are convinced in the little self that that's annihilation, when in fact it's not annihilation. It's just reset. And so, if we, to finish this out, so make friends with yourself. This is something that is really a powerful tool in the spiritual life, is perceive who and what's happening through your consciousness, and then make friends with it. Don't be an enemy of yourself. Be a supporter, but be an honest supporter. Don't kid yourself. When you made a mistake, admit it. It doesn't mean you have to put up a billboard to the world and say, I made a mistake. But you should, at minimum in your own mind, you go, wow, I made a mistake. And I remember Swamiji it was probably 2007 or 8, something happened. And Swamiji had supported a certain situation completely. And then that situation completely failed and turned away from his efforts to support it. And in the most natural, the way a child would say it, he said, well, I guess I really missed that one. There was no attempt to hide it, to ignore it, to explain it away. The way most little selves, well, I gotta save face here. I've gotta not let anybody realize that I made a mistake. And he was never like that. Swamiji was the most willing person that I've ever been closely associated with, that was willing to say, I was wrong. I made a mistake. To look at the truth of something, and not to be identified with any limitation that may be present. Say, well, it happened, but that doesn't define me. So this mistake was made, but that doesn't define me. That's just one small part of a much greater reality. So the practice of self-study is one of the tools, and one of the signs that of advancement itself. One of the natural consequences of the spiritual life is that you will perceive more and more clearly what is truthfully happening through your consciousness and the reality of your identification with spirit rather than with the little self. And this is what we say freedom. We are seeking freedom, spiritual freedom, freedom from the limitations of the little self into the freedom of omnipresent spirit, which is true freedom. Freedom from all suffering, freedom from all forms of limitation. So this is an important part of our arsenal for spiritual growth, And I encourage you to experiment with the process of perceiving, living more and more consciously, and connecting that to your intuitive connection to spirit. And always invite the Guru to be with you, to guide you, to help you to understand what's happening, and then give it all. As I was saying before, in the evening, Swamiji suggested that you observe what took place in the day, then give it to God. And so burn it in the fire of your inner offering. It's done. The day is done. I experienced it. I learned from it. It's done. It's in the past. And tomorrow's a new day. And don't let the past hold you back. Use it to inspire you to seek freedom, but with a positive, energetic, enthusiastic attitude every morning. It's a new day. Okay, here we go, Lord. Let's have a good time. Namaste.